coves, which led to a large inland lake, and in the winter time the roads near the mill were black from all the coal dust which shifted down from the big charcoal crates. Sorry, smelter. Smelter is where you separate ore, like this was a mine. So they were getting ores, and those ores, they were separating ores and material, mineral. Sorry, I gave you the scoves, we call that thing which they pull with hand, that is called scoves. So all these things were there. During one of the long dark evenings just before Christmas, the master smith and his helpers sat in the dark forge near the furnace waiting for the pig iron which had been put in the fire to be ready to put on the anvil. Every now and then one of them got up to stir the glowing mass with a long iron bar, returning in a few moments, dripping with perspiration, though, as was the custom, he wore nothing but a long shirt and a pair of wooden shoes. Pig iron, that piece of the iron which is in the forge, which is in the fire, um, to become red, so that they could hammer it and put it into shape. So they were waiting for that pig iron to be ready to hammer. All the time there were many sounds to be heard in the forge. The big bellows groaned, and the burning coal cracked. The fire boy shoveled charcoal into the maw of the furnace, mouth of the furnace, with a great deal of clatter. Outside roared the waterfall, and a sharp north wind whipped the rain against the brick-tiled roof. It was probably on account of all this noise that the blacksmith did not notice that a man had opened the gate and entered the forge until he stood close up to the furnace. Surely it was nothing unusual for poor vagabonds without any better shelter for the night to be attracted to the forge by the glow of light which escaped through the sooty panes. Now, soot is that black smoke. Whenever we make fire, a lot of black smoke comes out, and then that black smoke, sometimes it is collected on the wall. So sooty panes. So those panes, those windows, those doors, they were black with the soot. So through those sooty panes, sometimes people like vagabonds, they see that there is fire inside, there is warmth inside. So it was not unusual when a vagabond entered the forge, and they did not notice it until he was very close by. So So surely it was nothing unusual for poor vagabonds without any better shelter for the night to be attracted to the forge by the glow of light which escaped through the sooty panes, and to come in to warm themselves in front of the fire. The blacksmiths glanced only casually and indifferently at the intruder. Indifferently means without being affected. Hmm? So he neither welcomed him nor asked him to leave, just did not pay any attention. So Blacksmith looked at him indifferently. He looked the way people of his type usually did, with a long beard, dirty, ragged, and with a bunch of rat traps dangling on his chest. Dangling means hanging. He asked permission to stay, and the master blacksmith nodded a haughty consent without honoring him with a single word. So, in signs, in without with the gesture of his head, with his eyes, he asked for the permission. The vagabond asked for the permission to be there for the night, And blacksmith gave the permission haughtily and did not say a word. The tramp did not say anything either. He had not come there to talk, but only to warm himself and sleep. In those days, the Ramsjo iron mill was owned by a very prominent ironmaster whose greatest ambition was to ship out good iron to the market. He watched both night and day to see that the work was done as well as possible, and at this very moment he came into the forge on one of his nightly rounds of inspection. Naturally, the first thing he saw was the tall ragamuffin. Now, ragamuffin is another name given to the protagonist. This is also for the same man. Naturally, the first, and this name is given to him because he was wearing rags. Okay, naturally, the first thing he saw was the tall ragamuffin who had eased his way too close to the furnace that steam rose from his wet rags. The iron master did not follow the example of the blacksmith who had hardly deigned to look at the stranger. Now, another word here for you, deign, means when you think something below your dignity. So, blacksmith did not talk to the vagabond. He thought that it is below his dignity to talk to a vagabond. But iron master did not think so. And he talked. He walked close up to him, looked him over very carefully, then tore off his slouch hat to get a better view of his face. Tore off means took off. But of course it is you, Niels Olaf, he said. How you do look! The man with the rat traps had never before seen the iron master at Ramsjo and did not even know what his name was. But it occurred to him that if the fine gentleman thought he was an old acquaintance, acquaintance means somebody whom you know. He was an old acquaintance, he might perhaps throw him a couple of kroner. Therefore, he did not want to undeceive him all at once. See, the vagabond knew that the iron master was making a mistake, thinking that he was his old comrade, means old friend. But the vagabond did not want to clear this confusion. And why so? Because he thought that he might get some money from this man. So he replied, "Yes, God knows things have gone downhill with me," he said. "You should not have resigned from the regiment," said the iron master. "That was the mistake. If only I had still been in the service at the time, it never would have happened. Well, now of course you will come home with me to go along up to the manor house. Manor house is a big house which is made beside the farm. Okay, so to go up to the manor house and be received by the owner like an old regimental comrade, that however did not please the tramp. So here the writer is saying that he did not clear Iron Master's confusion because he wanted some money from him, but going to his house as a guest, as an old friend, was too much. So Vagabond was not ready to take this risk. So he must have said no. Let us see. "No, I couldn't think of it," he said, looking quite alarmed. He thought of the 30 kroner. To go up to Manor House would be like throwing himself voluntarily into the lion's den. He only wanted a chance to sleep here in the forge and then sneak away as inconspicuously as possible. Inconspicuously means un without being noticed. So he wanted to sleep, and in the morning he wanted to go out without being noticed. "Please don't think that I have such a fine home that you cannot show yourself there," he said. "Elizabeth is dead, as you may already have heard. My boys are abroad, and there is no one at home except my oldest daughter and myself. We were just saying that it was too bad we didn't have any company for Christmas." Now come along with me and help us make the Christmas food disappear a little faster. But the stranger said no and no and again no, and the Iron Master saw that he must give in. It looks as though Captain Von Staley preferred to stay with you, Stenstorm, he said to the master blacksmith and turned on his heel. Turn on his heel means started back. But he laughed to himself as he went away, and the blacksmith, who knew him, understood very well that he had not said his last word. Not said his last word means he did not mean what he said. Okay, it means he was not going to leave this vagabond in the mill. It was not more than half an hour before they heard the sound of carriage wheels outside the forge, and a new guest came in. But this time it was not the Iron Master. He had sent his daughter, apparently hoping that she would have better powers of persuasion than he himself. She entered, followed by a valet, carrying on his arm a big fur coat. She was not at all pretty, but seemed modest and quite shy. So, valet is a male servant. So, Master's daughter came with a male servant with a fur coat, and she intended to take this vagabond home. She was shy, she was quiet, she was not very pretty, but well behaved. In the forge everything was just as it had been earlier in the evening. The master blacksmith and his apprentice still sat on their bench, and iron and charcoal still glowed in the furnace. The stranger had stretched himself out on the floor and lay with a piece of pig iron under his head and his hat pulled down over his eyes. As soon as the young girl caught sight of him, she went up and lifted his head. The man was evidently used to sleeping with one eye open. He jumped up abruptly and seemed to be quite frightened. Now, this is very funny here that he used to sleep with one eye open. Maybe the writer is trying to say that he used to sleep, uh, he used to have like dog sleep, all alert. So as soon as the girl took off that hat which he had put over his face, he woke up. Now the next part of this lesson we'll do in the next video. Thank you.